We're going to start, and welcome to room 6. This is session number 2 with none other than the BNI guy, Mr. Lawrence Roberts, and he's going to be empowering your chapters to make those hard decisions. I do know, as I've mentioned just a bit earlier, that he is the, what did we say, kindergarten at TikTok. So it is good. You have to look at some of those humorous items. Well done, Lawrence. And I'm going to ask Pat to do just a quick introduction to Lawrence's history in BNI. Over to you, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cindy. And welcome, everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to Lawrence Roberts. I've had the privilege of knowing Lawrence for many, many years. And I want to tell you, when he first joined BNI, he was the reluctant BNI member. And he was a member of a small chapter that was in a suburban area of Canada, just outside of Edmonton. And he wasn't actually planning to stay around. So we challenged him. We saw a lot of value in Lawrence. We challenged him to become the chapter president. And he did. And he turned that small chapter around, made it a huge success story, and started building a reputation across the region. And people came to know Lawrence, and he became very requested. They wanted him to speak at their chapters. And so we invited him to join the regional support team, which he did. And lo and behold, one day he was out celebrating with a chapter who had finally achieved green in traffic lights. And he told them that if they got to green in traffic lights, he would dance for them. Little did we know what he actually meant. And if I had known about this, I have a photograph of Lawrence in his green socks and his green board shorts and his green t-shirt and his green hat with green balloons all around the room, dancing up a storm for the chapter that finally achieved green in the traffic lights. To me, that speaks to commitment while having fun. And I think you'll all know that Lawrence is a king of having fun and is greatly, greatly committed. He moved across the country with his family to support new regions in BNI. I am so thrilled to have him as one of our, we started here. I love him deeply. I call him affectionately one of my BNI sons, and I'm thrilled that you get to hear from him today because he's awesome. Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. All right, and thank you for that. That was a really nice introduction. It's very true. I did dance for that chapter, and I believe there's still a picture of me doing that in your office somewhere, or Annan's office. And thank you everybody for being here and coming to listen to me. I love especially the members that I work with. Thank you for coming and supporting me in this. This is something, this topic is something that I've grown to learn and love very much. I didn't really understand this until I started working as an executive director and how important this topic is. And so I hope that you can take some notes, or there's some things that you can learn from this. If you have questions, I would love to answer them. So I'll try to make sure that I'll save some room at the end for that. So this works well with what Pat shared, because I'm going to talk about my family, and I'm going to talk about my BNI family. So for many of you, you know that I have 5 girls, so 5 kids. This is a picture of them last year. My wife is a photographer, so she does great pictures and always makes our kids look amazing. And this is one of them. And these are my family. All right. So I love my children. They are amazing, wonderful, beautiful people, and they support me and I support them. And as such, I am the parent, and sometimes I have to be the parent, and that means not always being the lovey-dovey guy that you got to be as a parent, but sometimes being the disciplinary parent as well. That's going to tie into more of what we're going to talk about later. This is my BNI Parkland chapter. So this is the chapter that I was a part of, and they were my BNI family. I look at this picture today, and I get so warm and heartfelt. And this is probably 5 years ago now. But I see my accountant is still in this picture, and my really good friend Dan Houcher, who has been like a mentor for me for a long time. I see a couple of the guys that I started a BNI biker gang with. I see a wonderful lady who I'm still really good friends with on social media, and we talk about our kids all the time. I see another lady where her daughter or her son was in the same class as mine in elementary school. They're just my family. This is my pride, like what we heard from Don Lyons yesterday, and I love them. But this is my new family. These are all the directors and the ambassadors that I work with. Actually, this isn't even all of them. These are just all the ones that I had on my computer at the time that I put together this presentation. I think there's probably 6 or 7 others that I could add to this list. But these are the directors and the ambassadors that I work with in Saskatchewan, in Ontario, and now starting to work with some of the directors and the ambassadors in Manitoba. These are my family. These are the people that I get to work with on a day-to-day basis. Most of these people I talk to weekly. They are my family. I love them. They support me. I support them, and they are my family. And just like a family member or a parent can't always be the lovey-dovey person. I wish that sometimes you guys could hear the conversations that I have with the directors. When I need to do something that encourages them to do better, I'll be like, you know what, you're the most amazing person in the world, but stop doing that. You know, like we have to be a family, and as a family, there's going to be weird dynamics and challenges and struggles, and sometimes we have to do hard things, and that's what I want to talk about today. And so we know that in BNI, we often refer to our BNI chapters as our BNI family. The people that we associate with become our friends. And Ivan Meisner says one of the strengths of a good networking group is that most of the members become friends. And ironically, one of the weaknesses is that most of the members become friends, right? Because it is hard for friends to keep friends accountable. But it is so important in our chapters that we do make those hard decisions when the time comes. So we're going to talk about, as directors and ambassadors, how do we help our chapters make those hard decisions with their BNI family. So I guess we should start off with what some of those hard decisions are. And we're not a really big group right now, so I think we could do this. But if you want to unmute yourself, what are some tough things that chapters have to deal with sometimes? So if you want to unmute yourself and throw some ideas out there, what are some tough things, hard decisions?
Put somebody on a probation.
Probation, yeah, great one. Pat, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Having to deal with a customer complaint about a fellow member.
Thank you. Any others?
Old member syndrome. Oops.
Sorry, I heard from Karina. What did you say?
Personality conflicts.
Personality, yeah. Thank you. Cindy?
Old member syndrome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Decline a renewal or application.
Yeah, very good. I have some of these. Let's see what I have. So putting members on probation. So right up. Oh, sorry, John, did you have one?
I think one of the hardest decisions that members face is the actual decision to make known a problem that they're having or a concern that they're having, for fear that they will spoil a friendship, spoil a relationship, or spoil their opportunity to be referred to.
That's so true. Having that courage to stand up for whatever the situation is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we heard, yep, declining an application, right? That's a challenge, right? Oftentimes our chapters are so desperate for new members, we just let everybody in, and declining an application can be difficult. Not approving a renewal, right? So not renewing a member, also quite challenging. Acting on poor behavior. So that kind of goes in when if someone is not really participating, not showing up, those kind of things. But it also goes if they're going against the code of ethics and not doing anything. So acting on those types of things. Showing reports in chapters, that can sometimes hurt when you have to show some of the bad news that's going on in the chapters. Kicking somebody out of a chapter, that can be quite messy sometimes. Yeah, terminating a membership. Enforcing that attendance policy. I'd say this is one that a chapter has to deal with almost on a weekly basis, deciding how to enforce that. Oops. Yeah. So these are decisions that I listed on here because oftentimes I find chapters don't want to deal with it because of the negative repercussions, or they're afraid of what's going to happen, or they don't really think it's a big deal, so they just let it slide. Does that sound familiar to us? Is that stuff? Oh, of course, right? We don't have to be in BNI very long to start recognizing things. And for those of us that are as directors and ambassadors, these are things that we have to work through all the time. So what happens if a chapter does not work through these or deal with these? What are some of the things that can happen? Drama! I hate drama. It is the worst thing in BNI. But and if you listen to some of the podcasts of Ivan Miser, he hates drama too. He hates it. So the healthier our chapters are, the more we reduce the amount of drama that comes through. Okay, so if we don't deal with these things, it can get nasty, and drama will erupt in your chapter. Okay, low engagement. You know, if we don't deal with these things, we can only hold chapters accountable to the level of our weakest members. And so if the weakest members are dictating the energy and the engagement in the room, we're never going to have a high level of engagement in our chapters. The really strong members are going to get frustrated and leave. They're either going to go find another chapter that does enforce or uses accountability, or they're just going to decide BNI doesn't live up to what they say that they are or who they are, and they'll leave with a bad taste in their mouth. Okay, we're not going to be able to fulfill the needs of those stronger members. Low credibility. So if you have somebody that visits a chapter and they see a bunch of nothing going on in the room, what's the likelihood that they're going to want to get involved? Or how is that going to impact the credibility of the members in the chapter? Especially, if you're showing reports and everybody on the reports are doing very little. Ruins a chapter's reputation. I'll tell you a secret. People want to join awesome chapters, right? And so when somebody emails the office and says, hey, I'm a so-and-so, I want to join a great chapter, where do you think the office is going to send them? To the smallest, weakest chapters in the region? Or the ones that are highly accountable, running the program, doing everything it's supposed to, high energy? Oh, of course, right? That's where we're going to send them. So when your chapter has an opportunity to do the accountability and do all this stuff, you're going to attract more members like that. Okay. Decreases, you're not going to make as much money in those chapters. Okay. That's just as simple as it is. You won't get as much referrals and you won't make as much money. You'll get high turnover, which is hard on a chapter. We're a relationship-based organization, and if you're constantly losing and gaining, losing and gaining, losing and gaining, it's really hard to build relationships with those people. And the longer that people are in a chapter together, the more referrals they're able to generate. It takes time. And if you're constantly losing people because of issues and drama and not obeying the rules and stuff, it's going to be hard on your chapter. So what do we do? Okay, so as directors and ambassadors, we have a unique opportunity where we can come into chapters and we can support in a way that somebody who is in the chapter can't support in that same particular way, because we're not there every week. We don't have the same level of relationship that everybody else has in the room, and that's okay, because it's okay to have a little bit of separation between you and the chapter, so that when hard decisions need to happen, you can jump in and help them. But in order for a chapter to trust you, they're not going to reach out, they're not going to look for you, they're not going to rely on you or depend on you unless they trust you. So how do we build trust with the chapters? How do we get to the point where we can support them and they will rely on us for comfort or for information or resources or ideas? Well, we got to be attending those chapter meetings, right? That's pretty standard. We know that. We need to be booking one-to-ones with those people and be strategic about it. Who are the natural leaders or who are the appointed leaders in the room? Book one-to-ones with those people first. Okay? Start to build that trust with them. One of the greatest ways to build trust with a chapter that's not your own is past referrals. When you're visiting a chapter and you can say, and oftentimes the chapter will be like, oh, Lawrence, it's okay, we'll just skip over you for the referral testimony around. You go, oh, no, actually, I got some referrals today if you want to, I can report. or I brought a testimonial, or I have something to contribute, I brought a visitor, right? If you can show the chapter that you're willing to contribute on the same level that they are, that's fantastic. Make sure that those referrals and the things that you're reporting are for their chapter. Don't just be like, oh, I did 17 referrals for another chapter and one in no. If you have report on the ones that you're giving, try to give to the chapter. Bring visitors to their chapter. Invest of your time and your talents. Okay, so that giver's gain philosophy, it works so well when you're supporting other chapters as well. And this goes along with what Pat had mentioned, where be a little bit vulnerable. So dancing in front of a chapter that qualifies, I guess. What Pat didn't mention was I actually showed up to that chapter meeting with like my jacket on and sweatpants and a hat and everything like that. And so I told the entire chapter that it was last minute. Sorry guys, I didn't get a chance to like put on my tie and my tag and all that stuff. So I just ran out the door. So that's why I'm dressed like kind of like a homeless person today. And so they just kind of went past that. But what I did is when it was my turn to do the weekly presentation, I actually walked up to the front of the room and I started peeling off clothes to show my green clothes underneath it. So I like started stripping in front of, and so I don't know if there's a better way to show vulnerability than stripping your clothes in front of a chapter. Work up to that. Maybe don't start with that, but the truth is when you show that you can be a little bit goofy and you can be a little bit vulnerable, it shows that you are humble and confident and you're willing to make friends and you're not above them and you're just working with them in a different capacity. Okay. So we need to build that confidence and trust with that chapter so they understand that we truthfully do have their best interests at heart. So what do we do next? Make sure that you have their back. One of the greatest ways to build that level of trust with the chapter is to save them in some capacity. Pat Stride actually taught me this. I didn't understand it, but at the time she said, whenever you're going to visit a chapter, make sure that you're prepared in ways that they might not think. So come prepared with a presentation in case they forget. You know, if you have a projector or an extra computer, keep it in your car, your truck. Be ready just in case. And oh my goodness, I don't know how many times I showed up to a meeting and they'd be like, our speaker didn't show up. Can you please bail us out? Sure. No problem. When you get a chance to jump in and bail them out of a situation, my goodness, that's one of the fastest ways to build trust in a chapter. So be a resource for them. When they don't know what to do, make sure that you help them in any way that you can. If you don't know the answer, go find the answer. And Ivan Meisner says he would much rather have directors with really, really good positive attitudes as opposed to a long-term member who's been around for years and years and years, because the attitude makes a difference. And oftentimes with those new directors and ambassadors, we don't know the answer to the questions. That's okay, but go find it and give it to them. So be absolutely dependable. I've heard so many great stories of people who have fallen in love with their directors because they're there, they're consistent. And I've heard horror stories where they're like, we don't want anybody in our region. Every time they say that they're going to come, they're not going to come. They flaked out on their activities or their presentation time. We don't want that. Okay, so be there, show up, answer questions, and back them up. So don't argue with the president in the middle of the chapter. Don't interrupt in a chapter and be like, what are you guys doing? That's not right. No. Okay? We're there to support them. We're not there to dictate or police or govern their meetings. We're there as a resource to help them achieve what they want to achieve. Okay? So back them up. And then be the tool or weapon or sometimes the defense that they need them to be. So bail them out if needed. So what's going to happen is all through these slides, what I'm trying to talk about is you are building a relationship with this chapter. And now what we're doing is we're taking that relationship and we're empowering or we're encouraging them to start to act on the things that you will have seen going on in the chapter right from the beginning. But at the beginning, if we act on that, they'll never trust you. They'll reject you. They'll get defensive. But now that we've spent some time building up a relationship with them, we can now be either a shield to protect them from something that might be happening, or we could be like a hammer, which could be used as a tool of destruction, or it could be used as a tool to build up. Okay? And so what I mean by that is, let's say that your chapter has somebody that really shouldn't be renewed. They just aren't really doing anything. All they do is they show up at the meeting because they get referrals, but they don't send anything. They don't do one-to-ones. They don't bring visitors. They don't do training. They don't do anything. If we go to the chapter vice president and we say, is this person considering renewing? And they're like, oh yeah, they're renewing, but we really don't want to renew them. We just don't know how to go about doing that. Is that something that might happen in a chapter? Yeah, of course. Well, we can say, well, why don't you talk to your membership committee, see if there's maybe a probationary measure that you could put into place over the next 2 or 3 months. And so by the time they get to the point where they need to renew, if they haven't met those probationary measures, they'll be out. They'll be like, oh, that sounds good, but I'm super scared. I don't know how to do that. Well, why don't I draft up a letter? Why don't as a director, and I can draft something up for you. You see if you like it, and then we can go from there. Okay, thank you, Cindy. So what you're doing there is you're empowering them. You're saying, this is what you need to do. This is how you do it. Maybe you can be the method of delivery. Maybe you guys make the decision and we can go together to help execute that plan. Or maybe I could reach out to the executive director and see if they have some insights on something that we could use or an idea that we can go. So it sounds like you want to do something. Let me do whatever I can to help you make that decision. Or maybe a chapter is dealing with some drama. This person said this person said this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. What do we do? As a director consultant, we can't come in and take over, but as a director consultant, we can come in and say, let's put some action items into place. Let's hear both sides of the story. And really, when something gets absolutely nasty and messy, chapters shouldn't have to deal with that stuff on their own. It's probably time to get the executive director or director involved, and they might even take it over from there. Actually, the first meeting that I ever started as a member, 2 members got kicked out that same day because of the executive director and the director, they took care of everything. Our chapter didn't have to deal with it. Now we're pretty well equipped to manage small to medium size issues, but when it gets big, let them know that they have a support system. We got their back. So that's where the shield comes into place. But the truth is, we have a larger perspective as a director and ambassador. And so, like a parent, if the child feels that they have the confidence of the parent behind them, they are more willing to act if they know they're not alone. If the child has to do hard things, if a parent is there to support them, they're a lot more willing to do it. And that's the same with chapters. If they know that we have their back, they are a lot more willing to try to do those hard things because they know they're not in it alone. And if it goes bad, all else fails, we can take over. So when you're explaining these things and you're going through it, make sure they know the why. The reason why we have to deal with these hard things is because it's tried and tested consistency. It's fair, it's most valued, it's unified, it's what you paid for. This is what we're doing. Accountability is extremely important, and having a team of directors and ambassadors behind you is so key. So my family, as you know, is all girls, so this fits in perfectly. Chapters need to have courage, and as directors, we need to be kind. And if chapters know that they have that parent or that director or an ambassador right there behind them, they will take that leap, have a bit of courage, and will make that hard decision. And if it does go bad, let them know that you were there for them. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Great presentation. I know one of my big messages that I'm hearing from you, well, a couple, is listen, 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 and then listen some more. And it's okay for us to be the bad guy. In fact, it's probably better for us to be the bad guy and help with the relationships in the chapter. I'm going to open that up to, yes, great comment from Pat. Proud to know you, Lawrence. Great job. Are there any questions for Lawrence or comments that you would like to make. We've got some time for Lawrence's Q&A. He did such a great job, right?
Lawrence, could you address maybe if we're working with an ambassador who wants to, how do I put this? If they are feeling like they are a part of the chapter and they're wanting to step in on every measure and kind of take over from the membership committee, how do we work with somebody who's maybe in that position?
I think education goes a long way with that, and Ivan does a great job. Actually, the first director consultant town hall that they hosted a few months ago, he actually went in and said, "Don't do that." And he gave a really good story about how he was a director consultant for like a year and a half and did nothing because the chapter didn't want him to do anything. So he would go visit, 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 and then eventually somebody said, "We need some help. Would you help us?" And so that's the position that we should be doing in. And so if there's an ambassador or director that wants to take over and is constantly trying to fix things, and then as an executive, I might change the chapter that they're in to give them a fresh new start and see if we can start over again. Or really focus on that training and say, look, if you're going in there as the leader, they're not going to take ownership in what you say. They have to decide what to do, and you are the supporting cast to help them achieve that. So the more education, utilizing Ivan Meisner, or maybe just a change of environment might help to reset paradigm shift sort of thing.
John.
Do you have any experience or wisdom that you could share with us on the subject of switching ambassadors between chapters and how to do that in such a way that it doesn't in and of itself upset that ambassador's credibility with their new chapter?
Sure can. I did this just recently, actually. And the longer that directors and ambassadors work with a chapter, the harder it is to tear them away from there. And so there's so many reasons why. I mean, if it's change of time or your ambassador director team is growing, and so you need to make some adjustments and whatever. So there's always going to be a reason why that there's a change. But I think that the best way to do this is a personal invitation. And so when you have a chapter director leaving or ambassador leaving and you have a new one coming in, it might be a good time for an executive director to come in and do a personal invitation to the chapter, thanking them for all that they do, letting them know that there's difference and there's change and whatever the situation is, and that we're inviting a new person to come in. The other thing is getting the new ambassador or director to come in and maybe spend a little bit of time thanking and showing gratitude for the last person that came in and all the hard work that they did, maybe even showing all the benefits and all the value that they added over the last month or year or however they were long in the chapter, and letting them know that things change. I think most chapters realize that they won't be able to have their director and ambassador forever, and when situations change that they'll be able to have someone to come in. The other thing that I would suggest is, and this is just a suggestion, it's not in the rule book or anything, it's just an idea that we tried, having that person stay on for maybe a month or two as a transition, and say for the next couple months we're actually going to have two people supporting your chapter while we make this transition. And so Karina's on the call, and we've had that. We had to tear her director across out of her chapter, and they stayed on as an ambassador for a couple months until their next director was comfortable. So having a transitional period might be an option as well.